6, 7 inverse functions. In order to have an inverse, you must first be a function. Remember back in the day whenever I said had the ice cream candy example? I said, how many people in here want ice cream? You raise your hands. How many people want candy? You raise your hands. And I said, because everybody voted we are a function. Now, if you voted for ice cream, you raised your hand. You could not vote to get candy also, right? It was either ice cream or candy. You had to make a choice, which meant that X values could not repeat. If you voted for both ice cream and candy, that meant that you repeated your X value, which meant that you were no longer a function, right? Now, in order to be a one-to-one function, a one-to-one function says that my favorite ice cream in the world is chocolate fudge brownie, which means nobody else can have my favorite ice cream, which is chocolate fudge brownie. I am stingy. I get only that. Nobody else in the entire world can have that ice cream. It's mine and mine only.
What do you do, dark chocolate?
I like chocolate fudge brownie. Okay? Now, what is your favorite? Cookies and cream can only go for Brittany. Nobody else can have cookies and cream, because if you do, then that means it's not a one-to-one function. A one-to-one function says that the x's and the y's cannot be repeated. Do we understand that? Yes or no? Okay? Now, this means it passes the horizontal line test. The horizontal line test says that it is a one-to-one function. A vertical line test says it is a function. Domain and range. If I want my inverse, inverses mean they're opposites. What's the opposite of x? What's the opposite of y? X, right? So therefore, the opposite of domain would be range, and the opposite of range would be domain. When you have inverses, they swap domain and range. You with me? Now, if I give you something that looks like this, and I say, is this a function? In other words, the question you ask yourself is, did my x values repeat? 1 chose chocolate, 2 chose chocolate, 3 chose vanilla, 4 chose vanilla, 5 chose vanilla. Did any of my x values repeat? Both choose chocolate and vanilla. No, we had no double dippers there. Does that make sense? We had no double dippers. Nobody was able to get 2 different varieties. Okay? So therefore, this is a function. This is a function. Is it a one-to-one function? In other words, did only one person eat out of the chocolate tub container? Or did only one person eat out of the vanilla container? No, we have double dippers there. Meaning, 2 people tried to eat out of the chocolate. This is not legal. It is a function, but it is not one-to-one. Do we understand that, yes or no? Look down here. Is this a function first? In other words, what's the question we asked? Did x repeat? 1 went to 6, 2 went to 9, 3 went to 7, 4 went to 8. X did not repeat, so therefore it is a function. Why is it a one-to-one function also? Because 6 is only going to 1, 7 is only going to 3, 8 is only going to 4, and 9 is only going to 2. Do we understand that? There are no double dippers there. This is a one-to-one function. And since it is a one-to-one function, what exists? The inverse. Now, this is just like problems 1 through 4 of tonight's worksheet. I give you ordered pairs. 1 goes to 2, 2 goes to 4, 3 goes to 6, 4 goes to 8. Is this a function? Did my x's repeat?
No.
No, my x's didn't repeat, so is it a function?
Yeah.
Yes, this is a function. So since it's a function, my next question is, is it a one-to-one function? In other words, did my y's repeat? No, my y's didn't repeat, so therefore I have an inverse. And since I have an inverse, that means that my x values and my y values are simply going to what? Swap. So therefore my inverse is going to be 2, 4, 6, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Do we see that? That's all you have to do for problems 1 through 4 is simply swap out x and y. Do you get that? Yay, nays?
Now, are they always right?
Yeah. Now, the next thing what I want you to understand is if I graph this thing. If I graph the original problem, which is 1, 2, 2, 4, 3, 6, 4, 8. And then graph the inverse. 2, 1, 4, 2, 6, 3, 8, 4. What do you notice about those? Why is there a line there? Line of symmetry. It is the line of symmetry, which means that these things have equal distance away from the line, y equals x. Which means anytime you have inverses, the graphs are going to be reflections over the line, y equals x, meaning my slope is 1 and my y-intercept is 0. Do we all understand that? Yes, y equals x is the dotted line. This is just like problems 1 through 4 tonight. Do we all understand that? Yes or no? Excellent. Copy it.
Allergic reaction to math.
Okay, how do we find the inverse? Step 1. If you are given f of x notation is just a fancy way of saying Mr. and Mrs. You get what I'm saying? Well, in math, a fancy way of saying Mr. and Mrs. is f of x, and that represents the same thing as y. Do we understand that? So if you see f of x, just substitute y in there. Don't make it hard for really this. Just say y is f of x and just be done. Now, switch x and y. Switch x and y, and number 3, solve for y, and 4, replace y with f inverse. F to the negative 1 of x indicates the inverse function. Every time you see f to the negative 1 of x, that's not a negative exponent, folks. You do not get rid of it and put it on the bottom. That's not what that's saying. Okay? Yes, I appreciate that's where your brain might go, but that's not what it's saying. What I want you to do is f to the negative 1 of x means your inverse function of f of x. Are we all good on that? Little drummer boy, quit drumming. Okay, what is the inverse of y equals 2x plus 8? Y equals 2x plus 8, what does that look like graphically if I were to graph this thing? It's a line. It's in the form of y equals mx plus b. It's in the form of y equals mx plus b. Which means y equals mx plus b is just going to be a line. Which tell me, does that pass the vertical line test, meaning is it a function?
Yeah.
Yes, it passes the vertical line test. It is a function. Is it a one-to-one function passing the horizontal line test?
Yeah.
Yes. So therefore, since that is a one-to-one function, what exists? The inverse exists. So how do I find the inverse? Step 1. Do I have f of x notation? No. Step 2. Swap out x and y. So if I'm swapping x and y, x is equal to 2y plus 8. Now what? Solve for y. So do what? Subtract 8. So x minus 8 is equal to 2y. Now what? Divide both sides by 2. X over 2 minus 8 over 2 is equal to y. So 1/2 x minus 4 is equal to the f inverse of x. Did you see how I simplified those and also replaced the y with f inverse of x? Yay, nays? We good on that? Now here's my question. Is my inverse, Dylan? Is my inverse a function? Why? No, that's not always a true statement. Because your original problem was to have an inverse, doesn't mean your inverse is an inverse. Okay? So is 1/2 x minus 4 a function? Well, hello, what form is it in? Y equals mx plus b. So everything that's in the form of y equals mx plus b will have an inverse and is a function. Do we understand that? So yes, this is a function. Yes, this is a function. Is it a one-to-one? Yes, it's a one-to-one. Do we understand that? Mx plus b. Next, here we go. What is f inverse, the inverse of f? Okay? What it's telling you is find the inverse of f of x here. So how do I find the inverse? Step 1. Replace f of x with what? So do I have f of x? Yep, y is equal to the square root of x minus 2. Step 2. Replace x and y. So x is equal to the square root of y minus 2.
Square both sides.
Square both sides. X squared is equal to y minus 2.
Add 2.
Add 2. Now what?
X squared squared plus 2.
F inverse of x is equal to x squared plus 2. Is this a function? What does x squared look like? It's a parabola. So if this thing is a parabola, does this thing pass the vertical line test? Yes, that passes the vertical line test. So yes, this is a function. Is this a one-to-one function? It is not a one-to-one function because I have a double differ here, don't I? Okay? Which means this is not one-to-one. If it's not one-to-one, does this thing have an inverse? No. Do we understand that? Okay, do this one. Okay, now, what is the inverse of the relation described by y equals x squared minus 1? First off, what do we know about x squared? It's a parabola. And what we learned about parabolas, is it is a function, but is it a one-to-one function?
No.
No, it is not a one-to-one function, which means there is no inverse. There is no inverse. Do we understand that? However, it wants you to show them why there is no inverse. Do you get that? So let's pretend that there is an inverse here, and let's try to figure out what the inverse would be. So step 1, do I have f of x notation?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. So step 2,
Right?
replace y and x, swap them out. So step 3,
And which one are you supposed to replace?
we'll swap x and y.
X equals
Swap x and y.
Squared up
Y
squared.
and Y.
Just, it doesn't matter what form it is in. I don't care if x and y are on the same side. All it's saying to do is to swap x and y. Wherever there's an x, put a y. Wherever there's a y, put an x.
Squared doesn't carry over.
Yep, well it did. It was x
mean
squared.
it's going
I made
with
y.
X doesn't say with the X.
No. Okay, now I need to solve this for y, so what do I do?
Square root.
I need to solve for y.
Add 1.
Add 1.
Oh.
Y'all are got brain farts today. X plus 1 is equal to y squared.
Root.
Now square root that. And when I square root that, I have to add the plus or minus. And as soon as you see that plus or minus, alarm should be setting off your head,
Bar.
right? And the reason why, bar, yes, but the reason why we have this plus and minus is because in order for this to be reflected of the line y equals x, do you see that? I'd have to have both parts of it, right? It would have to look like this. Do we get that? For it to be reflected over that. Which means, that's why I have to have the positive and the negative part of it. Now, my question is this thing an inverse? It's not a function like this, so no, we don't have to worry about this right now. Do we understand that?
No, it's not a function.
No, it's not like that. Plus and minus is not. Because if I put them together, does it pass the vertical line test? No. If I keep them apart, will it pass the vertical line test? Yes, it will. So now, go to the next problem. F inverse of f of 3. The directions give you f of x is equal to 3x minus 2. Next time you're standing.
No, I'm just going to make it bigger. That's me.
This is like last night's homework, isn't it? What does that little circle mean?
Oh.
No. It indicates a parenthesis, which means you're doing composition, right? So I'm doing the composition of f inverse of f at 3. In order for me to do the composition of f inverse, what must I find first? I have to find the inverse. So how do I find the inverse? So how do I find the inverse of f? Find inverse. So replace f of x with y. Now what? Swap x and y. X is equal to 3y minus 2.
Add 2.
Add 2.
Divide by 3.
Divide by 3. And then f inverse of x is equal to x plus 2 all divided by 3. That's my inverse. Correct? Now can I do the composition?
Sure.
Sure. Now what's it telling me I need to do first? We gotta get a big assignment. I found the number and then I said, what is it touching? What letter is it touching? F. So I pull the F function down. And f of x is described to be 3x minus 2. Every place I see an x, well, I can place it. A 3. That gives me 3 times 3 minus 2. So that's going to be 9 minus 2, which is 7. So now this tells me to do f inverse at 7, correct? Right? Do you see that? So if I'm doing f inverse at 7, well, what is f inverse? X plus 2 over 3. And every place I see an x, what do I plug in? I plug in a 7. So that gives me 7 plus 2 over 3, which is 9 over 3, which is 3. So what's my final answer up here? 3. In order for me to do that problem, what did I have to find first?
F negative 1.
I had to find my inverse. This is exactly like tonight's homework. So here is tonight's homework. You have to even for homework. What do you think the odds are? Extra credit.
Yeah, 11.
Problems 1 through 4. We already talked about problems 1 through 4, and it looks just like this, correct? Problems 5 through 22. Problems 11 through 22, where it says graph each relation and its inverse. Don't graph it, just find its inverse. So get rid of graph each relation, just say find its inverse. For problems 11 through 22, find the inverse is all I want you to do. 11 through 22, all I want you to do is find the inverse. For 23 through 25, that's exactly like the last example I just showed you. Are we all good on that? Okay, now, one last example for tomorrow. If I give you f of x is equal to 2x minus 3, g of x is equal to 5x plus 1. I want to know what f of g of x is. How do I do that? I need to solve this thing for x? Nope. What do? What is g of x? Just bring it up here. Okay. G of x is 5x plus 1. So now, every place I see an x, what do I put in place of it? 5x plus 1. Okay, so this is going to give me the 2x minus 3, and I'm going to plug in the 5x plus 1 there. Can we see that? So this is going to give me 2 times 5x plus 1 minus 3 to give me 10x plus 2 minus 3 to give me 10x minus 1. You have 1 on the quiz tomorrow. 1 on the quick quiz like this. Do you understand that? Okay? If f of x is equal to 2x plus 1 and g of x is equal to x minus 2 and h of x is equal to x squared minus 1. What is g of f of h of 0? How do I do that? What do I do first? I'm going to do h 0. Well, h is x squared minus 1. So that's going to give me 0 squared minus 1, which is negative 1. What does that mean? Now f at 0 is negative 1, so I'm doing g at f at negative 1. So now I need to do what? The f at what? Negative 1. Well, what is f? 2x plus 1. Every place I see an x, I plug in a negative 1. So that gives me negative 2 plus 1, which is negative 1. Now what do I do with that? I'm going to do g at negative 1. Well, what's g?
X plus 2.
Plug that in. Negative 1 minus 2 gives me negative 3. So what's my final answer? You have 2 problems like this on the quick quiz tomorrow. Can we do it?
Yeah.
It's not multiple choice.
Oh.
You either know it or you don't. Any questions over anything I talked about today and yesterday? Okay, quick quiz tomorrow. Even tonight for homework, odds for extra credit.